Hello everyone, you're very welcome to this information webinar, and what we'd like to do is give you information to help you in the return to training for the youth and adult player, male and female. And we're very lucky to have Mick Dempsey here, a very experienced manager, coach, trainer in all codes, and particularly, most notably, for the Kilkenny senior hurlers. So thanks very much for joining us, Mick. It's so important to have the coaches perspective on this, as the coaches out there will be leading this return to play and a very, very responsible role to play for the young players, particularly as they return to training. So I'd like to share some slides to start with. So the Be Ready to Play programme in partnership with UPMC is helping the community return to play, all the players, male, female, boy, girl. And this particular document that's part of this programme is to guide the first few weeks of this return to training. So this is available on the GAALearning website. It's been sent to every club. It was part of the Uachtaráin's letter to the club, and I think it holds invaluable advice for all coaches, players and parents. Now, this was developed by the project team of Be Ready to Play. This was developed as well with the Gaelic Games Sports Science Advisory Group, and also special mention to the Athletic Development Subgroup of the Advisory Group. Now, there is links in this document to more resources, particularly the club COVID-19 club education section, and they focus on the government guidelines for safety, social distancing, pre-post training, and the important points of avoiding or reducing body contact to a minimum during training. So huge and valuable information there available to all coaches. Also, there's a link to the Be Ready to Play programme, and we'll be given more information on that in a little bit later. But how I'd like to summarise this document is leave the players wanting more for the first few weeks of training. The whole world of sport is finding it challenging returning to play and training after such a long period of inactivity. People have been training in their back gardens, in their living rooms, restricted movement. That means less opportunity to sprint over large distances, less opportunity to kick over large distances, contact, decision making, change of direction, agility. We haven't done it for a long period of time, and that, if done rapidly, if done at high intensity, can increase the risk of injury. So these tips will help reduce that risk. Here you can see the information on COVID-19 club education. It's hosted on the GAALearning website, and there's many documents that are specific to the 6 counties, specific to the 26 counties, helping coaches return to play. And the Be Ready to Play programme was launched way back in March with the idea that the players complete work at home to condition, to prepare for this return. And that consists of monthly webinars, from a coaching perspective, monthly webinars from a sports science perspective, and fortnightly athletic development programs for youths, adults and advanced adults. And you can see here the site and where it's hosted and the links to the various programs. And I must say, some excellent content there that's going to run right through the season. So there'll be advice for all stages of the season. And it was developed, as I say, by the Be Ready to Play project team, partnered with Setanta College, also the work of the Gaelic Games Sports Science Working Group, and some high calibre people involved in this working group, and the subgroup of athletic development. They particularly contributed to this document. So the key tips, the first 2 is complete the Be Ready to Play programme. So hopefully players will have been completing this in the build up to this return. And if they haven't, there's always the opportunity to go back, start it now, start from the early stages, do it alongside training, and that will also help in your season, in your return to play, in your enjoyment and in your performance. There's also an excellent resource by the GAA called the Ga15 Warm-Up. Now, this is evidence-based. This gives you guidelines on how to warm up, and it's based on neuromuscular training, which is proven in research to reduce the risk of injury, to bring down the number of injuries that happen during training. So if this was added to your training, if this was completed at the start of your training, it would help so much in the return to training. And now I'll hand over to Mick to talk about some other of the tips.
Thanks very much, Des. Delighted to be here. It's an exciting time for everybody in the GAA with our young people returning to play this week, and the weather is great, and our coaches getting back out onto the pitch also. As Des has already said, the key to returning to play is a gradual build-up in all aspects of your preparation or training, in terms of volume, intensity, sprinting, kicking, and it needs to be done over a gradual build-up over a period of weeks, 4+ weeks. The start-off point for coaches is to start off at a lesser volume and intensity as to what players were used to, and then over a 3 to 4 week plus period, increasing the volume and intensity. What's hugely important is to avoid big spikes in your training in terms of volume and intensity. So the key word here again is a gradual build-up. What's also important is not to do any testing early on in your return, as this can also increase the risk of injury. So the key point we're trying to get across today is a gradual build-up in small increments and avoiding spikes in your training. What's key is we want our players fresh, and we want them wanting more when the session is completed. And in this respect, as coaches, we have a huge responsibility to avoid looking for more and putting pressure on players to give more. So planning and patience on our behalf is crucial in this early phase. Probably one of the best ways to return players to competition and playing is the use of small-sided games. Small-sided games are used by all teams because they replicate the demands of the game. They replicate the physical conditioning, the technical, the tactical. So small-sided games represent a great way. They're also very enjoyable for players, but because you can manipulate the variables in terms of volume and intensity, and you can replicate the technical aspects of a game, they offer coaches a great way because they allow you to monitor what's actually happening with your players. So some of the key guidelines around small-sided games is, again, we start off with small volume, we start off with low intensity. So initially we use small areas. Over a 4-week period, we move to large areas. We move from short games to long games, and we move from simple rules to complex rules. Apart from intensity and volume, the other variable which has a huge influence over the effort players are putting in is coach encouragement. And I have made this mistake in the past, but because we love determination and we love commitment from our players, we will roar and shout at players to put in a greater effort. So if we've planned small-sided games with a certain intensity, low intensity starting off, low volume, we can't then change the rules and start looking for more. So as coaches, we need to keep our emotions in check, and we need to follow the guidelines you had set out for the session. If for some reason you feel players are working too hard, you may take a break, you may reduce the time. And for instance, if you feel players are not being taxed enough, maybe you can increase the time or change the rules. So don't be afraid to change, depending on what you see in front of you, and use your coaching eye.
And Mick, just what I think will be a common question is, would a side lose any competitive advantage, lose any development with this gradual approach over the first 2 weeks? Is there anything to be concerned about?
I suppose ultimately, that's what we're looking for with our players is performance. If you take a sensible, common sense approach, but the tips and guidelines you have here are also based on research and the principles of training. You will not lose, but you will gain, because I think we need to have the end in mind. So what do we want in 4 or 6 weeks, or when we return to playing matches? We want all of our players. We have a duty of care from a welfare point of view. We want all of our players injury-free. We want all of our players healthy. And we want players to enjoy the build-up to getting back to play. So we need to reduce the risk of injury. Injuries will happen. But in terms of conditioning, you will not lose because you will have a gradual build-up. And hopefully you will have all of your players playing after being out of the game and being very stressed out over the last number of months.
Thank you, very important advice. And the next tips are in the area of introducing speed and introducing kicking. So we know that the players wouldn't have been sprinting to a maximum because of the restricted movement. We know that there wouldn't be too much long kicking going on. And a lot of other sports who have returned earlier have found that there has been a larger than normal number of say quad injuries from the kicking action, explosive kicking actions, because of the long period without it. So it's key to plan this. And the suggestions are that you gradually introduce speed after you've done your GAA warm-up. Do some stride outs. And in the first session, stride out to 70%. The second session up to 80%. The third session up to 90%. And at least once a week, do 90% plus intensity, change of direction or sprints just after your warm-up. And this will prepare the player for sprinting and ease the player into sprinting. Similarly with kicking, gradually ease them into kicking as part of your session. Kicking at the start for accuracy over shorter distances, build them up to medium distances, and limit fatigue over the first 2 weeks. And then as the weeks progress, increase fatigue, increase pressure, increase chaos, and increase distance. But for the first 2 weeks, a conservative approach, controlled amount of kicking and controlled distance and intensity of kicking. And this will really help your players recondition to sprinting and kicking that will set a good foundation for the coming weeks.
It's usually important in our sessions that we have some format or some model to monitor the intensity of our sessions. So if we're going from low intensity to high intensity, the rate of perceived exertion is a great way to monitor the intensity of your training sessions. So on the right hand side, we see 1 is really easy. We see 9 is really, really hard, and 10 is up to max effort or game tempo. So it's a very easy tool to use. The volume is the time, the intensity is the rate of perceived exertion, and it's time multiplied by intensity gives you the unit workload for that particular session. So in terms of having facts and having some data, you can measure your early sessions, and we would recommend maybe in week 1 that you're looking at approximately 450 units in a session, building up over a 4-week period to approximately 900 units per session. But obviously we don't want to jump from 450 in session 1 to 800 or 900 in session 2. So again, the key word is gradual, but this is an excellent tool for coaches to use, and it's an excellent way to educate your players in terms of the intensity you're looking for. What's important as well, obviously, our sports, camogie, ladies football, hurling and football are contact sports. We all love contact as coaches. Players love contact. But you need to gradually introduce it. As Des has said, most of our players over the last number of months have been running in straight lines and no contact. So press-ups, burpees, use of tackle bags are allowed. So it could be somebody trying to pick up a ball and somebody laying into them with a tackle bag. It could be a pivot, a short run and a pivot off a tackle bag. So depending on the demands of your game, you can use a tackle bag to replicate what actually happens in a game. Again, the key word is you gradually introduce it. Maybe your first week back, you would have little contact, but over the next 3 to 4 weeks plus, you are gradually building up over that period.
And the next tip is focusing on knowing your players. So as a coach and as a parent, maybe if you want to share with the coach, it's important to know the training age, the injury history, who has completed the work before getting back to training and who hasn't completed that work, and people being honest and sharing that information. Remembering fitness levels of players in the past, technical ability, so you can pitch the session at the right pace and intensity, and listen to players. They may have concerns, they may actually not want to come back to training for whatever reason it may be. So listen to them. If they're young players, let them know, put their mind at ease that what they would suggest will be part of the training, so they can have something to look forward to. But ask for feedback as you go through the first few weeks. Listen to the feedback, design your session based on that. And you may even individualize the session from this information for particular individuals. So it's really important to know your players. And then particularly youth players, you wouldn't have seen them for a long period of time. And some players will have gone through growth spurts. And that means they're growing quite fast at that moment or have just gone through a growth spurt. So this needs to be managed. It doesn't mean that they stop training, but you should pay closer attention. And you can visually see which are the players that have gone through the growth spurt. And then this, unfortunately, predisposes them to growth-related injuries. And if, for instance, a player has 2 out of 10 pain in the knee, like an Osgood Satter's issue, then maybe they should do less than the other players in that session, and they're referred onto a medical practitioner. If the pain level is, say, 5 out of 10, maybe that session isn't for that player and they rest, and again are referred to a medical practitioner. And with younger players, the pitch sizes, the number of players are based on the rules for that particular player, and the same principles are applied, and even maybe more conservatively with these young players. And maximize recovery. Let's not go back and fill the week with many different sports so the player doesn't have a rest day. Rest days are important. It's important not to do 2 high intensity sessions side by side on the same day or days next to each other. It's important to maximize recovery, to get good quality sleep, get good quality eating habits, and reduce screen time. So in between all this increase in activity, there's good quality recovery. And if the players find stretching important and beneficial, then they should do that. And there is information available from the Be Ready to Play website on nutrition, and there's also a webinar from a physio rehab perspective to help the players. So this document is available. It's on the GAALearning website. There's many tips, as you've just heard, and the key phrase is leave the players wanting more. You are shown where you can get the guidance on club education in relation to safety and COVID-19, social distancing. The 6 counties are back at full training on the 23rd of August. and they've got challenge matches on the 1st of May at adult and youth levels. The 26 counties are back for youth players, underage players, on the 26th of August. So the relevant information for the 26 counties and the 6 counties are available on that website. And I would encourage you to all sign up for the Be Ready to Play program. This runs right through to the end of the season and helps you with content in the areas of coaching webinars, in the areas of sports science webinars, and the athletic development program can be done outside of training. It can be integrated into training and covers all the areas like mobility, stability, speed and agility, strength, power, and endurance. So let me just stop sharing the slides, and I'll let Mick conclude.
Thanks very much, Des. I know the slides are gone, but it was an excellent graph there of a 4-week period of how to build up your training. So I think if coaches follow that, obviously we can't be overly prescriptive in terms of, we don't know what age group you're working at, we don't know their training age, we don't know what training they've done in the off period, but if you follow those guidelines, you will have much healthier players when you return to competition. It's been great to be here today, Des, and I just want to compliment yourself and the sports science people for the great advice they are giving coaches in clubs all over the country. We've come through a very challenging time, unprecedented, uncharted waters. There is no exact blueprint in terms of return to play, but if you follow the guidelines and the tips which you have outlined today, it's going to be a great service for all of our coaches. We have a duty of care. It's now more important than ever, and I don't envy coaches, and I'm coaching myself at the moment, because everybody is so mad to get back. There's a huge danger that we will have spikes in training, that we'll forget about the gradual approach, but we need to keep the end in mind. We need to understand our players and educate our players. So apart from the science and all of the data which content which Des has presented today, it's how you as a coach communicate with your players. It's how you monitor and evaluate what you're doing, which is going to make the difference. How you reflect on your training sessions and adjust for the next session or during the session. So the huge importance of the responsibility you have to keep the end in mind, to keep your players healthy, and to get the best results possible. We're all getting back to the pitch. I just want to wish everybody all over the country, all the young boys and girls, all of our coaches, the best of luck with your coaching, and it's great to be back. And I'd just like to thank Des for having me on today.
Mick, thanks. And we couldn't have got a better person with your playing experience, with your managing experience, coaching experience, training experience. Coaches, parents, players, this is probably the best person in the country to guide you. And I wish you well, an exciting time. So enjoy, everybody. That's the most important thing. Enjoy the return to training, and best of luck with the coming weeks.